Hello, welcome and good evening, and today I want to have another look at the Atari 2600 because I've grown to like this machine quite a bit over the last months. It is actually really a lot of fun. It's a reasonably cheap retro console, although it is basically the first proper console with all the features that you would expect from a gaming system for the home, like cartridge program, sound, color, and all that stuff, and the joysticks. It is still pretty affordable, and there's a ton of original games for that. So there were hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands, I don't know, but definitely hundreds of games produced for the console, which ran from 1977 to somewhere in 1990, I guess. So that machine was produced well over 10 years. And you've got Atari originals like Missile Command, Miss Pac-Man, and some more weird stuff like this little Jump'n'Run Lily Adventure. And I've got a bunch of other original games. And most of the games are actually pretty fun, or at least there's a big portion that is actually pretty fun. For example, Miss Pac-Man is quite nice, and Missile Command is one of my favorites on the system, although I think with the trackball it would play much better, and the Atari version used the joystick. There's still something lacking from these games, and they were produced on PCs or whatever computers of the time. You had to code an assembler for the Atari. Turnaround times would be probably pretty long and tedious. So this game from 1981 doesn't use all the features that the Atari actually had. And you can watch on my second channel, the Plus channel, some things that the demo scene put out in the last 10 years. So long after this machine was already obsolete for decades. And they show off amazing graphics and sound that is actually possible with the Atari. Maybe not for games, because then you won't have enough computing capability left over for the actual gameplay. But better games are actually possible, so better in the sense of graphics and sound, and maybe even in the sense of gameplay itself. Because let's face it, some of these are pretty limited and also a bit dumb. Yeah, anyway, so there is, apart from the demo scene, a big homebrew community around the Atari 2600, and in the next couple of episodes I will show you off at least 2 games. And this is one of them. This is actually currently my favorite game for the Atari 2600, and it's Mappy. And as far as I know, this is a port basically of an existing arcade game from the 1980s. And yeah, it's absolutely professionally produced. I've already opened it. You can get it from the Atari Age store. Atari Age is the biggest forum for Atari users, be it for the 2600 or for its successors, or the 8-bit line of Atari computers, doesn't matter. So they will ship you this stuff worldwide. It of course is not for free, so you will have to pay a substantial amount in the order of whatever you would pay for a modern game, because let's face it, people worked months on this, and it has a very small print run, usually maybe a couple of hundred, at the most maybe a few thousand copies of these things available, and they will become collector's items eventually, but we're not here to collect them but to play them. So yeah, with some of the games, like with Mappy, you get a nice box. Some of the other games you just get the cartridge, and usually you can also get a manual. If we take a look at the back, so Mappy is an arcade classic. You guide Mappy, the mouse police, through the cat burglar's lairs and retrieve the stolen goods, but beware of booby traps and their crafty leader, Goro, that's the red cat. Can you help Mappy win the day and bring those cats to justice? Yes, of course we can. And already when we take a look, we see the graphics will be quite nice for the 2600. pretty close to the arcade machine, of course with limited resolution, etc. But the impressive thing here is that you also get music and sound effects that were not possible on the original Atari, and there's a reason for that. So if we open up the box first of all, you get the nice cartridge in a cardboard holder, and that cartridge looks just like any of the original ones. It even has the dust cover, and yeah, the label is very nice, glossy paper, high color print, and I ordered the PAL 60Hz version. So usually for most homebrew games they offer NTSC versions, PAL versions, and often there are two PAL versions, one PAL 50 and one PAL 60. The PAL 60 will run on basically any modern LCD TV which supports 60 Hz. For CRT TVs you will need the PAL 50 version. The advantage of the PAL 60 versions is usually that you get less flicker, because one technical limitation of the Atari is that it supports only 2 sprites per scan line, and otherwise it will have to do multiplexing by turning some sprites on and off every other frame, and this will lead to massive flicker, and the 60 Hz will help to make the flicker less noticeable. So whenever you can, make sure to buy the PAL 60 version. Beta versions of the homebrew ROMs are usually available in the Atari Age forums, so you can just put them on your Harmony cartridge, which we took a look at a couple of weeks back. But the final ROMs are often only available in the store to get the people to buy that stuff, I guess. You can't buy the ROMs themselves. Basically, you can't buy digital downloads yet. They might introduce that at some point. And you can't simply flash the ROM onto any cartridge, because this is basically a full Harmony cartridge without the SD card slot. So there is an ARM processor in here, which also helps with the music, and which is not available on any of the old cartridges. If you would replace the ROM in here, it wouldn't help. So you need a Harmony cartridge or the original cartridge here. So the platform for these games, they call them the music cartridges. I think. No, Melody. I think Melody. Melody cartridge, that's the name, which is basically the stripped down Harmony cartridge. And what do you get? Well, first of all, we get a nice little Mappy poster. If I were a teenager, I could hang it in my room. I probably won't. But it's nice to have these kinds of feelies, and you get a glossy, nice manual. And in the manual you get the backstory of Mappy, pretty nicely drawn. And I guess this is, again, they usually have, especially the authors of Champ Games, usually try to get official licensing. So this is probably an officially licensed product by the current Mappy copyright holders. If they don't, they rename the game. For example, there's a Gallagher clone. People probably still know Gallagher the space shooter in the works, but it got renamed due to them not getting the license. But if they get the license, they try to stick to everything that was also in the original game. You get the story, you get the controls, which is not that hard. So you've got your joystick for moving left and right, and the joystick button for opening or closing a door. You've even got a pause function here. If you toggle the color black-white switch, then you pause the game, which is nice, because usually you can't pause games on the Atari 2600, and it's good to take a break when you're currently on a high score run and suddenly someone rings the doorbell or you have to go to the bathroom or something. So that's nice. And the difficulty switches will determine where the loot that you have to collect is located, either in random locations or always in the same location, and the right switch determines the way the sprites are rendered. So if there's only flicker when there's more than 2 enemies or sprites on a scan line, or if it always flickers so that you don't get disturbed by sometimes the sprites will flicker or sometimes not. The game even has an attract mode, like arcade cabinets used to have them back in the day, where it will show high scores and some demo or something, and it will try to attract players, which is of course not necessary for the Atari 2600 because it's in your home and it's not an arcade cabinet, but it's nice to have because it's more close to the original. And there are all the rules for the game. The game is pretty complex because you've got scoring for all kinds of different stuff. And the doors are pretty interesting because you can slam them into your enemies' faces, and you actually need that. And there's a lot of other stuff. I won't go into a lot of detail because part of the fun is to discover what kind of mechanics are there. The only important thing to note is that I didn't know there's a lot of more points in the game if you collect items by pairs. So of all items there's always 2, and if you collect first, for example, the computer and then the second computer, you get a bonus. And you definitely have to do that, otherwise you won't make the high score. And this game also supports the Atari Vox, or the save key. The Atari Vox is like a little TTS, text-to-speech synthesizer, which gives voice output to games. And it also has a bit of flash memory, and the save key is the same, but only this flash memory, and then you can even store your high scores. Otherwise, when you turn off the machine, the high scores will be gone. This is something I might buy in the future, but right now I don't quite need it. Yeah, the game has 5 objects that you have to collect: the radio, the TV, computer, painting, and save, and they have different scores, of course. And yeah, you should collect them in ascending order, because the bonus will get another multiplier every time you collect a pair, basically. So in the end you can have like 6 times 500, 3000 points only for the save, for example. Then there's a bonus stage, and we will have a look at that in a minute when we take a look at the gameplay. Yeah, so that's all the physical stuff that you get. It's very well made. The game is really a lot of fun. If you want to try it out, you can download the beta ROM and play it on your emulator and or Harmony cartridge. And if you like it very much, then please do head on over to the Atari Age store. I can thoroughly recommend it. Took a couple of weeks to arrive here in Germany. Had to go through customs and stuff, and you have to pay customs probably, because it will most probably be above your threshold for your country. I think this thing is like $50 with the packaging, and shipping wasn't that expensive, but I don't remember quite how much it was. So that's that. I'd say we have a look at the gameplay and see what else is in the game. Okay, the game starts up with the Attract mode, where you can select the difficulty in Easy, Standard or Advanced, and it shows you all the characters that play in the game: the Mappy, Micropolice, Goro the Boss, and the Meow Keys. And of course also the high scores for the different levels, and whenever you press fire you will start up in the currently selected difficulty. And in the beginning you will start in the lower right corner of one level, and you will immediately start collecting the loot that the Meow Keys stole. And here you can already see I'm trying to collect all the pairs to maximize my points. Now I already got a triple multiplicator for the bonus points. And also very important is to slam the doors. Here you can see that I'm opening the door and slamming it right away. Because if a mouse key, Meow Key, well, they got funny names, follows me, it will slam itself in the face. That's pretty useful. The flashing doors here, they have a booby trap, so the Meow Keys that are on that level will be basically swept away. And here we already finished the first level with a very good 11,000 points. The trampolines are the only means to switch between the levels here, and every time you jump on it, it will change color. When it turns red, you must not land on it anymore, or it will break and you will fall down and lose 1 life. If Goro, the boss, is hiding behind one of those loot crates or thingies, he will actually be surprised, and you get 1000 extra points. Every other time you meet him, you will lose a life, obviously, because every time you touch one of the Meowkis or Goro, they catch you, and you start off with 4 lives, I think, and every 20,000 points or so you get a bonus life. And every 3rd level is actually a bonus round, like this. You will hear music in the background, and you have to collect all the balloons before the music ends. And here you have to actually actively break through the trampolines at times, and timing is very crucial. If you make 1 mistake, you already will have a very hard time getting to the end without the music running out. So these have to be practiced quite a bit, but they are quite a lot of relief compared to the chaos that happens in the rest of the game. But still, you can't just lie back and relax. This is a very time-sensitive game, and this was recorded through my USB capture device, and it gives a little bit of lag during play, so you definitely want to play this with as little lag as possible. And probably you already noticed that there is quite a nice musical score in the background, and this is thanks to the melody technology or the harmony cartridge. Both support the same kind of music. This is not possible with a stock Atari with only the TIA chip. The levels get gradually more difficult because the trampolines get rarer in between. You've got these more complicated layouts, and more Meowkis will come into play. And if you take too long, they will speed up, and some extra Meowkis will come there to hunt you as well. You will get additional elements in the game, for example, like bells at the top, which you can drop down onto the Meowkis to stun them. But it definitely gets harder because there's less chance for you to hide, and you have to time your jumps very sensitively and accurately, because otherwise you will be surrounded by Meowkis and be trapped, because you can't do anything. You can only always run away. You've got a little bit of leeway when jumping off the trampoline. You can jump off the trampoline and then right back into the drop. The Meowkis will just hop off, and you can basically shake them off in that fashion. So the rules of the game are seemingly simple, but actually there's a lot of different gameplay mechanics that have to be mastered if you want to get the maximum high score, especially on the standard or advanced difficulty settings. This game has a very low frustration barrier, I would say, so it's very easy to master it after like half an hour or something. It's not like some other Atari games where you have to have super reflexes or stuff like that. And it's pretty rewarding due to the nice graphics, the nice sound, and the gameplay is a bit forgiving. As I said, you have some leeway when meeting some enemies. But it's definitely not a totally easy game. You will have to do some joystick mashing and button mashing. For example, I die quite a lot when I can't see where the enemies are coming from, because it's you're playing basically over 2 different screens, and you have to scroll, and sometimes you swap to the next screen and there's an enemy suddenly and you can't escape anymore. But all in all, this is definitely currently my favorite Atari game. Not even homebrew, but definitely Atari game. It's so well made and polished, it's a lot of fun, and I thoroughly can recommend it. You should definitely try it out. Okay, that about wraps it up. I do thank you for watching. Yeah, I will be revisiting this stuff in an upcoming episode because I have another homebrew game lying around. And when there are new games coming out where I think, oh, those are noteworthy and those are really fun, I will try to show them to you. So this is definitely a really fun game. It's a single player game, but you can take turns playing, and we already had fun playing with a couple of people in the evening. And yeah, please do share the video, like it, subscribe it, dislike it, whatever you want. Please leave a comment, interact, and please do come back again and watch my videos. I would be very thankful. Good night.